was an organized effort to end the practice of slavery in the United States. Since the inception of the Atlantic slave trade, which began in the 16th century, critics voiced their disapproval of the system. The Missouri Compromise of 1820, which allowed Missouri to become a slave state, further provoked anti-slave statement in the North. The Supreme Court ruled in the Dred Scott decision that black people, free or enslaved, didn't have legalized citizenship rights. These legal actions and court decisions sparked outrage among abolitionists. President Abraham Lincoln opposed slavery but was cautious about fully supporting the more radical ideas of the abolitionist. Writings and speeches by former slaves like Frederick Douglass helped to illuminate the evils of slavery and hold an uncomfortable mirror up to the hypocrisy of the American public. In his 1852 speech, Frederick Douglass commented,
"What to the slave is the 4th of July? This, for the purpose of this celebration, is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers were wise men, and if they did not go mad, they became restive under this treatment. They felt themselves the victims of grievous wrongs, wholly incurable in their colonial capacity. With brave men there is always a remedy for oppression. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty, your unholy license, your national greatness, swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour."
As the power struggle between the North and the South reached its peak, the Civil War broke out in 1861. As the bloody war raged on, Lincoln issued his Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, calling for the freeing of enslaved people in areas of the rebellion. And in 1865, the Constitution was ratified to include the 13th Amendment, which officially abolished all forms of slavery in the United States. Most historically black colleges and universities were established in the South after the American Civil War. Atlanta University was the first graduate institution to award degrees to African Americans in the nation, and the first to award bachelor's degrees to African Americans in the South. Clark College was the nation's first 4-year liberal arts college to serve African American students. Life in the post-war Reconstruction era South was challenging for black people. Discrimination was rife in the age of Jim Crow laws. Exercising the right to vote under the 15th Amendment was dangerous, and access to jobs and education was severely limited. With the dawn of the Ku Klux Klan, the threat of retaliation, violence for advocating for civil rights was real. In perhaps his most famous speech, given on September 18th, 1895, Booker T. Washington told a majority white audience in Atlanta that the way forward for African Americans was self-improvement through an attempt to dignify and glorify common labor. He felt it was better to remain separate from whites than to attempt desegregation, as long as whites granted their black countrymen access to economic progress, education, and justice under the U.S. courts. His speech was sharply criticized by W.E.B. Du Bois, who repudiated what he called the Atlanta Compromise. In a chapter of his famous 1903 book, The Souls of Black Folk, opposition to Washington's views on race inspired the Nigeria movement. Du Bois would go on to found the NAACP in 1909. Du Bois initially attended Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, a school for black students. After graduating, Du Bois attended Harvard University, starting in 1888 and eventually receiving advanced degrees in history. During the same period, Du Bois wrote The Strivings of the Negro People for the Atlantic Monthly, a groundbreaking essay that explained to white readers how it feels to be a victim of racism.
Between me and the other world, there is an ever unasked question. Unasked by some through feelings of delicacy, by others through the difficulty of rightly framing it, all nevertheless flutter around it. They approach me in a half-hesitant sort of way, eye me curiously or compassionately, and then instead of saying directly, "How does it feel to be a problem?" they say, "I know an excellent colored man in my town," or "I fought at Mechanicsville," or "Do not these southern outrages make your blood boil?" To the real question, "How does it feel to be a problem?" I answer seldom a word. After the Egyptian and Indian, the Greek and Roman, the Teuton and the Mongolian, the Negro is a sort of seventh son, born with a veil and gifted with a second sight in this American world. A world which yields him no self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in an amused contempt and pity.
Today, we celebrate the importance of education and the brave men and women who used the art of literature and public speaking to abolish slavery, reform, and changed America's destiny.